Welcome back to Driftwood Stories, where wings whisper and stars remember. Tonight we follow a tale not born on land, but lifted by sky, a story that rises like morning mist and drifts through the silence between clouds. This is the myth of Bellerophon, a boy with fire beneath his quiet heart, who dared to seek not just justice, but a kind of flight the world had never known, and of Pegasus, the silver-winged horse, born of sea foam and thunder, who chose to fly not above men, but with one. Together they will face monsters made of flame, and tempt the edge of the divine. But in the end, this is not a tale of conquest, but of balance, of learning when to soar and when to come home. So breathe slow, close your eyes, and let the wind carry us upward into the old skies where Pegasus waits, and the stars still know his name. Chapter 1. A name carried by the wind. There are names that strike like thunder, and there are names that drift, quiet, weightless, on the back of the wind. Bellerophon was both. In the bright-walled city of Corinth, where columns rose like frozen hymns and temples glowed at sunset, his name held a kind of hush. He was said to be born of Poseidon, god of the sea, shaker of earth, but Bellerophon did not crash through the world as his father might. He moved more like a cloud, calm, shifting, watching. As a boy, he rode without reins. The stable hands said he could calm wild horses with a touch. He once climbed the Acropolis wall barefoot, just to feel the sky closer. And when others sparred in dust and blood, Bellerophon sat under fig trees, carving birds into driftwood, eyes tilted upward. "Your mind is always in the sky," his tutors chided. "Perhaps," he would say, but the sky listens back. The people called him noble, but strange, the son of a sea god, and yet drawn to wind, the heir of a house, and yet always on the hillside. But it is often those with one foot in the air who fall first. One autumn, during the Festival of Leaves, a man died in the city, a nobleman, important. Killed with no witness, no warning, whispers curled through the courtyards, envy turned into accusation, and Bellerophon's name was the one the wind carried. He stood before the magistrates with clean hands and calm breath, but in courts of power, truth is often outpaced by fear. He was not jailed. That would be crude. He was exiled, politely, quietly, a noble shame hidden beneath the robe of justice. He left before dawn, a single satchel on his shoulder, no sword, no escort. Just the silence of one who knows shouting changes nothing. He did not look back, and so his path began. He crossed the dry plains of southern Corinth, where the sun cracked the earth like old pottery. He slept beside olive roots, drank from sheep troughs, shared bread with passing strangers. In Arcadia he mended a farmer's gate and was offered a place by the hearth. He sat in a grove of pines one night and watched the stars ripple in a pond. His breath slowed. The forest rustled, not with danger, but as if recognizing one of its own. In his dreams, wings beat above the treetops. Eventually he reached the citadel of Tyrins, a place of stone and steel ruled by King Poetic, whose gaze saw everything, and whose smile never reached his eyes. Bellerophon entered as a guest, quiet and respectful. He asked for no titles, only refuge. He helped in the stables. He played the lyre softly in the evenings. The queen, Stanaboia, noticed. She spoke to him in corridors, lingered too long during meals. He answered politely, respectfully, never more, and that in time turned her warmth to ash. Spurned, she whispered poison into her husband's ear, that the stranger had insulted her. Worse, Proetus did not raise his voice. He merely smiled, and gave Bellerophon a scroll, sealed in wax, bound in ribbon. "A gift," he said, "for my friend and ally, King Iobates of Lycia. You would honour me by delivering it." Bellerophon bowed, and once again he walked, this time toward Lycia. The scroll, tucked inside his tunic, bore not words of friendship, but a message to kill the bearer. The land shifted as he travelled. The ground grew redder, the air warmer. He passed caves with painted mouths and stones that hummed when he stepped near. And then, the spring. He did not know how he found it, or rather, it found him. A grove of silvery oaks stood ringed around a pool of water, clear as moonlight. The surface was so still it held the sky like a mirror. As he knelt to drink, a breeze stirred the leaves, and he heard it. A whisper, a name, Pegasus. He rose slowly, heart thudding. The name echoed in his bones. Then something impossible. At the edge of the pool lay a feather, long, curved, white, not like bone, but like lightning seen through fog. He did not touch it. He sat beside it and waited. All night he waited. Stars turned overhead. Owls called. But Bellerophon did not sleep. And when the first pale breath of morning touched the trees, he looked up and saw him. Pegasus, wings outstretched, coat like melted pearl, eyes deeper than storm. He did not gallop. He glided down, barely touching the earth. They stared at one another. Bellerophon did not move. He lowered his gaze. The horse stepped forward, and then, gently, slowly, rested his head against the boy's chest. No bridle, no force, only trust. From that moment, the wind had two names. Chapter 2. The Spring of Pegasus. The morning after Pegasus descended was quiet. Bellerophon stood ankle-deep in the sacred pool, sunlight trembling across the surface like breath. The great winged horse stood beside him, drinking with slow, even sips. There was no saddle, no rope, nothing but stillness between them. Pegasus's wings were not white like snow, but like sunlight on waves, shifting, iridescent, every feather breathing some forgotten shade of sky. His hooves touched the earth lightly, as though he did not fully belong to it. Bellerophon did not try to mount him, not yet. He sat on a stone, spoke in whispers. "I did not come for you," he said, "but I think I've been walking toward you all my life." Pegasus said nothing, of course, but his gaze did not leave Bellerophon. That evening the wind changed. The smell of the sea rose from inland, and Bellerophon knew it was time. He reached into his satchel, pulled free a bundle wrapped in old cloth, a gift from a priest in Arcadia long ago. A simple bridle, plain leather, but the bit was lined with silver, and the thread was knotted with prayers to Athena. He approached slowly. Pegasus watched him, still as carved marble. Bellerophon whispered a single word, "Together," and Pegasus bowed his head. That was how it began. Their first flight was not high, not far, just a leap, across the spring, above the grove, under the rising stars. But to Bellerophon, it felt like eternity folding in half. The air held them, not heavily, not with force, but with gentleness. Wind curled around his legs. The world below shrank, And the sky opened like a long locked door. They landed in silence. Pegasus snorted once, and Bellerophon laughed. From that moment they were not rider and steed, but something else. Something closer to one soul in two bodies. The days that followed were dreamlike. They flew each morning, not for practice, for joy. Bellerophon learned how to move with the wings, to lean with the current, to follow the sound of wind breaking on mountain tops. Sometimes they'd land in high meadows where no man had ever stood, drink from snow-fed streams, sleep beneath eagles. Sometimes Pegasus would rear beneath the moon and scatter starlight with his hooves. One dawn, Bellerophon dreamed of the gods. He stood at the edge of the world. Olympus rose before him, vast and white, draped in mist, and a voice, low and calm, spoke. "You will be tested in fire, but the fall comes from flight." He woke with frost on his lashes. Pegasus dozed beside him, wings curled, one great eye half open. The next day they arrived at the gates of Lycia. Bellerophon wore no armour, no crown, only wind in his hair and a steadiness in his breath. King Iobates, older than rumour, met him in the great marble hall. His beard was like driftwood, his eyes clouded. He asked no questions about the journey. He looked only at Pegasus, and then at the scroll Bellerophon had carried, the sealed message from Poetic. And he paled, but his voice did not waver. "You are brave to come," he said. "Braver still if you stay. The task remains. If you truly wish redemption, the gods have given you a way." Bellerophon nodded once. "What must I face?" Iobates answered with a name that smelled of ash. The Chimera. A creature born of madness. Lion's head, goat's body, serpent's tail, and breath of flame. It had scorched fields, blackened rivers, torn through stone walls like paper. Bellerophon said nothing. Only, where? The king looked at the eastern mountains. She lives beyond the ash plain. Near the gorge the gods forgot. That night Bellerophon prepared. He polished the bridle, braided a charm Medea had given him long before he left Corinth into the strap. He spoke to Pegasus softly. "I do not seek to win, only to end this." The horse nuzzled his shoulder. At dawn they rose. The flight east was silent. Forests gave way to cliffs. Cliffs to smoke. The earth below turned black, as if burnt not once, but forever. Bones littered the gorge. Ash lifted in spirals. No bird flew. Then a sound. A low rumble, a snarl stretched by fire. The Chimera emerged. Its lion's head roared, flame lashing from its jaws. The goat's head bleated with hunger. The serpent tail hissed, dripping venom. It was rage made flesh. Bellerophon circled once above it, Pegasus beating great gusts of wind. The Chimera leapt, flame licking at the sky. The air turned hot. Bellerophon did not dive. He waited. Then, when the beast reared back, he dropped, fast as a falcon. He did not strike the head. He did not aim to kill with one blow. He dropped oil-soaked cloth into its jaws, lit by the breath of its own flame. The Chimera swallowed and screamed. Then Pegasus rose higher, while the beast thrashed in fire of its own making. The battle did not last long. When the smoke cleared, the creature lay still. The ground around it glowed with heat. Bellerophon did not cheer. He whispered thanks to the wind, to the horse beneath him, to the stars above, and Pegasus turned toward the sky. Chapter 3. The Fire of the Chimera. They returned to Lycia as dusk fell. Streaks of flame and cloud tangled across the sky like old gods still watching. The people gathered at the gates, not in celebration, not yet. They had not expected to see Bellerophon again, nor the winged horse shimmering against the fading light. But here they were, and behind them, in the eastern gorge, the Chimera lay silent. No more black smoke over the orchards, no more stone cracked by flame. Only the wind, clean and calm for the first time in years. King Iobarts stood waiting at the marble steps of the citadel, his robes catching the last golden rays. Bellerophon dismounted. Pegasus remained beside him, wings folded, proud but still. "You have done what none dared," the king said softly, "what none dreamed possible." Bellerophon lowered his gaze. The Chimera was a wound. I only closed it. There were cheers. Slowly, cautiously, the people began to sing. But Bellerophon did not smile. The next morning, the king held a feast in his honour. Musicians played songs of flight and fire. Children threw garlands of laurel. Toasts were made. Wine was poured. Bellerophon sat beneath the high dome, Pegasus tethered just outside the hall, where the breeze still reached him. He did not wear armour, only linen and a thread of silver braided through his hair by a girl from the village. "Speak of your battle," someone called. "Tell us how you struck." But Bellerophon's voice was quiet. There was no glory, only fire and smoke and silence. They quieted. He looked to the sky through the open roof. "I have felt the breath of the clouds. I have seen how small even a monster looks from above. When you fly, everything grows smaller, even fear." Later, after the music faded and the hall emptied, Iobates took him aside. "You are a rare soul," he said. "Would you stay, be prince of this land?" But Bellerophon only shook his head. "I was not meant for halls. I was meant for open air." The king smiled, but his eyes were sad. "Then take this," he said, and placed a small carved token in Bellerophon's palm. "The mark of my house. Should you ever return, it will be your home." Bellerophon bowed. Then he stepped out beneath the stars and returned to Pegasus. "We've done what they asked," he whispered, "but not what we came for." He did not know when the desire had begun, only that it had grown with each gust of wind, each silence above the clouds, a question, not of conquest, of wonder. What lies beyond the sky? And so he mounted Pegasus once more, not for battle, for ascent. They rose at midnight, past the mountains, past the high clouds, past the stars he had once named as a boy. The earth fell away, the air thinned, the sky turned from blue to silver to black. He saw the curve of the world, the glint of cities, the hush of mountain tops, and above them still, a glimmer, Olympus, not a palace, not a fortress, but a height beyond breath, beyond time, and the gods watched. Zeus turned his gaze from storm. Athena narrowed her eyes from behind her golden helm. Hera, ever watchful, whispered, "He climbs too far." And Pegasus, loyal and true, flew on. But Bellerophon, for all his courage, all his calm, did not see what they saw, a mortal heart reaching into immortal sky, not out of pride, but out of yearning. And the gods, ancient and unmoved, knew what must be done, not in anger, in balance, for no wings should fly forever. The air grew colder, the stars faded, And Bellerophon, still reaching, still hoping, suddenly felt nothing beneath him. Pegasus slowed, faltered, and Bellerophon fell. Not fast, not furious, like a leaf turning in wind. The earth called him back. The sky, merciful, held him long before it let go. He landed not in ruin, but in peace. In a field, soft grass, dawn light, his body was broken, but not his spirit. He lived, he healed, but he never flew again. Pegasus vanished. Some say back to Olympus, where the gods made him a constellation, a sign of grace, of flight without arrogance. And Bellerophon, once prince, once slayer, once seeker, lived quietly. He walked barefoot. He tended a garden. He taught children the names of stars. He never spoke of Olympus, only of wind, and of how sometimes even falling is a kind of flight. Chapter 4. The Ascent. Long after the Chimera's fire had cooled and the fields of Lycia bloomed once more, Bellerophon still woke each morning with sky in his lungs. Though he walked among farmers and shepherds, shared their meals, repaired their roofs, his eyes were never truly fixed on the earth. He would pause mid-sentence and watch the way the clouds passed, tracing their silent conversations across the blue. He had not flown in weeks. Pegasus remained nearby, not tethered, not confined, but close, grazing in meadows too steep for cattle, drinking from springs that the birds knew by scent alone. And yet Bellerophon waited until one evening, when the stars gathered early, as if to speak. He sat on a flat stone just above the village. A few children played near the stream. Smoke curled from hearth fires. The world was still. And then a question rose in him, not sharp, not loud, a whisper. What if I could fly again, not for battle, not for glory, but for something else? He found Pegasus in the grove where wildflowers leaned in moonlight. I don't want to conquer, he said softly. I want to understand. Pegasus lifted his head. For a moment neither moved. Then, as if stirred by something older than either of them, Pegasus bowed. Bellerophon climbed on. They rose before dawn. No farewell, no audience, just sky. First they circled the foothills, then the high ridges, then the jagged snow line where birds no longer flew. The clouds were thick that morning, dark with hidden thunder, but Pegasus moved between them like a thought, silent, sudden, sure. As they climbed, the world below shrank. Forests became threads, rivers, threads within threads. Mountains lost their menace, and the stars, once distant, grew brighter, closer, humming in their stillness. Then, far above, the air changed. It became thin but clear. It did not carry sound, only silence, and Bellerophon felt it. Olympus. Not a mountain, not a place, but a presence, a height beyond height, where the gods watched, not as tyrants, but as witnesses. He felt Zeus stir in the upper thunder, lightning curled like vines behind his brow. Athena, composed and steady, watched with a gaze sharpened by foresight. Hermes, ever curious, whispered, "Will he keep climbing?" And Bellerophon, breath quick, heart steady, leaned forward. "Just a little higher," he whispered. But Pegasus slowed, not out of fear, out of wisdom. They were no longer in the sky, they were between worlds, and Bellerophon, for all his clarity, all his calm, still reached, not out of arrogance, out of longing, to see, to know to arrive. He looked up, not to the stars but beyond them, to where no mortal was meant to dwell. And in that moment the gods did not rage. They mourned, for they saw a boy who had flown with grace, and now reached where wings could not follow. And the wind began to turn, not in anger, but in memory. Pegasus beat his wings once, twice, and faltered. Bellerophon felt it, the shift, the hush, and then he fell, not fast, not screaming, like a leaf in late autumn dancing between air and silence. The stars blurred, the sky sighed, and the earth, far below, opened her arms. It is said he landed in a field of softest grasses, rimmed by olive trees older than history. That a shepherd found him there, bones broken but breath still with him, and carried him gently to his home. That he lived, but changed, not humbled, whole. Chapter 5. Wings folded, feet on earth. They say when a man falls from the sky, the world holds its breath. But when Bellerophon fell, not from pride but from yearning, the earth did not punish. It caught him. The shepherd who found him by the olive grove did not ask questions. He saw a broken body, a quiet strength still alive behind the eyes, and carried him home without a word. It was months before Bellerophon could walk again. His back was twisted, his leg never straightened. Pain lived quietly behind each breath, but he did not curse the gods. He thanked the ground beneath his feet. The villagers built him a cottage of stone and cedar near the river bend, where the reeds whispered all day and owls called at night. Children brought figs and pomegranates. The elders brought silence, their greatest gift. No one knew where Pegasus had gone. Some said he flew back to Olympus. Some said he became the wind itself, still circling, waiting. But Bellerophon no longer looked to the sky in search. He had found what he needed on the ground. He tended a garden of herbs and stars, thyme, fennel, poppies, and small flowers he once saw bloom only at the highest altitudes. Each morning he walked slowly to the river, leaned on his carved cane, and listened. Not to prophecy, not to thunder, to birdsong, to frogs, to the hush of the wind over still water. He had flown higher than any man. Now he learned the shape of peace. Travellers came, whispered tales had spread, not of the Chimera, not of Pegasus, but of a man who had risen and returned. They did not come to be dazzled. They came to be still. Some asked questions. Were the clouds cold? Were the gods beautiful? But most asked other things. How do you let go of the sky? What does it mean to be enough? And Bellerophon would answer, with your feet in the soil and your heart still listening, the king of Lycia sent gifts, golden rings, chariots, silks. Bellerophon gave them to the temple or traded them for goats. He needed little. His greatest treasure was a feather, long, silver-white, that he kept tucked into the eaves of his home. It moved in the wind like a memory. Sometimes he dreamed. In his dreams, Pegasus returned, not wild, not young, but older. His wings faded slightly at the edges, like mist. He would walk beside Bellerophon, not fly. They would pass through fields, not clouds, and they would speak in a language only hearts remember. In these dreams, Bellerophon never tried to mount him again. He walked, one hand on Pegasus's mane, one on his cane, and the earth beneath them hummed. Then one twilight, years later, the breeze shifted. The villagers saw it first, how the light changed, How the wind curled in new directions, singing between leaves like harp strings. Bellerophon walked to the hill above his home, slowly, carefully. There, at the crest, he sat. He looked out over the valley, over the rivers, the trees, the fields that bent like old friends. He smiled, and then, very softly, he closed his eyes. They say no one saw him pass, only that when the morning came his seat was empty. His cane leaned against the stone wall, the feather above the door had vanished, and in the sky, high, very high, 2 stars moved where one had always shone, Pegasus and the soul of the one who understood him best. If you walk the old roads near the hills of Lycia, you might find the place they now call Bellerophon's Rest. The wind there is gentler, the wildflowers bloom long into autumn, and sometimes, just before the sun sets, you can hear the soft beating of wings, not above you, but within you, because some flights never end, they only change direction.